We had a friend of ours, is Jim McLeod, who's a local horticulturalist here, and he knew about this little patch of land, and he had told the council about it, but it had sort of just moved on and on and on, and everybody was ignoring it in terms of it being, you know, too hard, or it's still there, or whatever. But when we heard about it, which is about 3 years ago now, we knew, I mean, as soon as we saw it, we knew how fantastic it was. So we contacted the council, and they'd recently sold it to a developer, and it's zoned industrial. So there was a real issue with actually saving it. There was nothing in it that that was legal reason to save it. And the council is also planning flood mitigation measures all around that region, which would have dried it out and killed it anyway. So it was doomed. Right, as soon as we knew about it, it was headed for the gallows.
Well, it's the last swampy heathland remnant in the whole Wynyard district. Yeah, with 64 species of plants in it. And
it's not just the plants; it's the whole plant community, because heathland is the most biodiverse type of soil in Australia, actually, right throughout Australia. And it's really nutrient poor. The peat is really nutrient poor, so the plants grow very, very slowly, and they're multi-layered, so you get the most number of plants you got from ground covers to only about 1 metre or so high plants in it, because there's just not enough nutrient for them to grow trees and things like that. The plan was to try and save it as it was. We couldn't do that. So then, because I've been in Wynyard forever, I knew that heathland, that swampy heathland, had continued right through and was still present in the Frederick Street Multi-User Reserve, which is council-owned property. So I did some research again, and we looked at, instead of just transplanting the plants, to transplant the entire plant community. So for the next 2 years, Col, who's the original weed warrior, weeded that patch, kept as many of the introduced weeds out of it as we could. There was Spanish heath, there was Montbretia, there was gorse even.
Yeah. Various other garden escapees.
That's right. So yeah, so for 2 years that was weeded. Then finally the council, all the ducks were in a line, and the council agreed to help us move the entire little heathland bog. And so what we did was, in Frederick Street Reserve, we'd spoken to the other users there and found a posse that would work. We actually scalped that with a front end loader so that the ground level was the same, took that away and scalped the heathland in Goldie Street. So it took away up to 30
to a foot. Yeah, 10 inches to a foot, just like giant turf. Holeless bowlers.
2 metre wide and about 1.5 metres long, and we moved all then, so the front end loader would come carrying this precious basket and then lay it back out again, just like turf. And
it wouldn't stand handling. We couldn't put it in a truck and take it. We had to take it bucket by bucket down to the new site, because it would break up. The less we handled it, the better. So it was scoop, drive it down, come back with the waste dirt from the other site, dump that in the hole that was made in Goldie Street, and so on.
And then we had a team of volunteers there that were, if there were any exposed roots, they would be tucking those in, putting dirt on that, plugging holes with other plants that we dug up separately, and watering it. So we watered it right from the beginning. We had basically it flooded while we were working, a bit like working in a rice paddy. And then after we did all that, and that took 3 days of 2 front end loaders and a team of up to 25 people. And then we fenced it so that it was safe from the horses that use the reserve. And then we left it alone for winter. And this was a very wet winter, so unfortunately some of the plants have drowned in the back of the area. But in October earlier this year, we again got a team of volunteers, and I successfully applied for a couple of grants from Waratah Council and Cradle Coast NRM, and we built a boardwalk through it. And then it was officially launched by the council on the 18th of October this year. Yeah. We even call it translocating, because it's more than transplanting. It's the mycelium, it's the microfauna and flora that's in that 30 centimetres of soil. because again the peatland is so slow growing, it would have been unchanged here for a long, long time. And so it would have been how our first Tasmanians would have walked through this place. That's how it would have been. It's like going to Fossil Bluff, isn't it? And seeing those fossils. This is seeing almost the plant fossils, or the plant ancestors anyway.
And there's so little of it left because this land around here is so suitable for farming that it's been trashed for farming, which is
and housing, yeah.
And housing, yeah, that's a big one. And drainage and all of those things affect these plants, and it's becoming a scarce plant community, so we've decided to do something about it.
We called Friends of Remnant Heathlands of Wynyard, formed it as a land care group about probably 3 years ago, and there's a very active group of people in that. I think we've got about 25 members, but we've got about 60 or 70 people that occasionally turn up for things that we call out for, which is just fantastic. It's really taken people's attention. I think partly because it's small, partly because it's pretty. There's beautiful little flowers in there, little beronias and the Pattersonia, the little purple lily and things like that. So those two things, and the fact that people can be right there and see history is fantastic. You know, we're really proud of that group who's been so helpful. We even had, would you believe, too many volunteers turn up for some of the jobs we've had, and believing it was possible. Other people said, oh, you can't do it, it won't work. But we knew that it was going to be dead if we didn't, so we had nothing to lose except those plants. So even if we only saved 50%, that was worth saving. We had more dramas beforehand. Dealing with bureaucracy was not easy. The Wynyard Waratah Council did come on board and were fantastic, but there were hurdles. Definitely hurdles along the way. And it was the actual logistics of it was quite difficult on the day. The first tractor they bought was too small, didn't take enough ground. We had to go back, try and get the front end loaders and things like that. So yeah. And there is a website on the Waratah Council page. On their website there's a page called the Heathland Reserve, and that's got photos of about 50 of the plants and a little bit of information, and also it's got photos of the birds and animals that visit the heathland.